For this week's art task, you'll need a container of water. In your art pack, you've got the brown container that I would suggest putting water in. You will need the oil pastels that you got in your art pack. You will need a plate or a lid. There is a lid in your art pack. You will need a paintbrush. You will need your watercolour paints from your art pack, and this week you're going to need your watercolour book. So you've had lots of practice last week drawing your crystal clusters in grey lead. This week we're going to be drawing our crystal clusters in oil pastel. Pick one colour oil pastel to draw your crystal clusters with. You can have a little practice in your drawing book drawing your crystal clusters with the oil pastel if you like, because it is a little bit different drawing with the oil pastel rather than the pencil. So we're going to need to start by choosing one colour oil pastel, just one, and you're going to be drawing a crystal cluster, a large one, on one sheet of your watercolour paper from your watercolour book. Because I've chosen blue, if I have a look over here on this colour chart, I can see that my group of colours will be the green, the greeny blue, the blue, blue violet, and the violet that I can use in my crystal cluster. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my brush and just wet, just with water, wet one section of your crystal, the whole bit, just with water, nothing else. Make sure it's nice and wet, and then come over to your colour, wet your colour, dab dab dab, swoosh swoosh swoosh, get that colour coming off, and then you can start. A bit more. See how that colour kind of bleeds out into that water that you've already placed down. That's how we're going to get that kind of see-through look with our crystals. So each section is going to be a different colour, and you can add a little more colour to make it darker if you want. Trying to create some shadow in that crystal. Okay, I'm going to pick this other darker blue, get that a bit juicy, and add it over here to this section of my crystal. Might add a little bit more, just for fun. So over here, that oil pastel will create a nice barrier to stop your colours mixing into each other. Grab that blue, and I might add both blues. Dark blue and the light blue. So you can see what I'm trying to get going. So I'm going to do that each of these. Wetting it with water, going to my watercolour, pushing and rubbing, swooshing and whirling that paint all around. Remember, we don't want to rub too hard. Adding a little bit of purple to this one, just to get it looking more interesting. I'll do this one up here. So we don't want to rub too hard with our paintbrush, because what will happen? You know, the paper will rip. This watercolour paper is pretty good watercolour paper. You might have noticed it's really thick. And it being so thick will mean that it won't tear as easily. Hopefully not at all. Definitely not as easily as the stuff that you would... Ooh, look at that, that's pretty. Just add a little bit of purple to it. Try. Remember, I've got green in my palette over there too, so I can add a green one. Greeny blue. So, because I've got greeny blue, I kind of can add a bit of yellow as well, if I want, if I so choose, and I do so choose. Let's activate the yellow. Ooh. I like that. So the more water you add, the more see-through the colour's going to be. And we do kind of want it pretty see-through. So that's why we're painting the water on first and then adding the colour to it, so that just to ensure that we're really getting a really light colour. So if you're wondering what that plate is for, that is for mixing colours. So let's say you wanted to create a different green. Get your green, splosh it around on your brush, take it over to your plate, pop a little bit of the colour over onto your plate, give your brush a wash, come over to your yellow, so you're going to make a really bright green. And you don't want to make it on your paper, you want to make it on something else. So you'll take a little bit of that yellow, take it back over to your green, and you can mix that colour onto your plate. If you want it to be a bit, I think I want it to be more yellow. Over. So there I have my lime green ready to use on my painting. It's just another way of mixing your colours. So you can mix your colours on your paper by adding them to what you've already put down, especially when you've got that big puddle of water. You can definitely add them to that water to mix them on the page, or you can mix them on your plate like I've been doing over there. That's up to you. But that is what that plate is for. And if you do find you make a mistake by adding too much water and too much thick dark colour to something, that it ends up a little puddle like that, you can get a piece of tissue and just soak up a bit of that water so you can start to see your little crystal back again. There he is. Once you have finished your painting and and you've filled in all the different sections in your crystal cluster, do leave it for at least an hour to dry, because you'll notice there are a few puddles of water, and if you try to move them around, they might start to try and drip off the page and run off the page into areas that you don't want them to go. So do leave it flat to dry for about an hour. Same goes for your paint palette as well. Leave that for a little while to dry. If yours breaks up like my brown broke up, don't worry too much. Just try and leave it to completely dry, and then maybe try and keep it flat as well, so that the little crumbly bits don't crumble off into your bag. Try and keep them as flat as possible and on that little paint palette. The paint will still work when it's like that. It just means it's all crumbled up. That's fine though. You just need to be a little bit more careful with it. That's the only thing. So I'm going to have to be really careful with my brown now because it's all crumbled. Okay, so there we have it. Your crystal cluster watercolour. I can't wait to see them all when we come back to school in a few weeks. Thanks, guys.